They'd been best friends since they were 6, until he discovered the secret behind the wedding, Chapter 1, The Perfect Childhood. An unbreakable bond. The first time Ethan Carter met Liam Morgan, they were 6 years old, standing awkwardly at the edge of the neighborhood park. Ethan's family had just moved in the week before, and his parents had urged him to go make some friends. But he was shy, reserved, clinging to his toy truck like it was a life raft. Then Liam approached, his untied sneakers slapping against the concrete, hair a tangled mess of blonde curls, eyes wide with curiosity. Without hesitation, he sat beside Ethan on the rusted swing and asked, "Want to race bikes later?" That single, unassuming question was the start of a lifelong friendship. From that day on, they were inseparable, partners in crime, co-pilots, of adventures that stretched from the cracked sidewalks of their suburban street to the overgrown woods just beyond the cul-de-sac. The years passed in a blur of scraped knees, sleepovers filled with whispered secrets, and long summer days spent building forts and telling each other that they'd always be best friends, no matter what. Ethan and Liam grew up together through the painful awkwardness of middle school, first heartbreaks, and the quiet realization that the world wasn't as simple as it had once seemed. In high school, they navigated everything side by side. The football games where Liam shined as the star quarterback, while Ethan cheered from the sidelines, proud and content in his friend's light. The late nights in Ethan's garage where they fixed up Liam's rusted old pickup truck, laughing until their stomachs hurt. They were brothers in all but blood. And then there was Sophia. Sophia Harrison moved to their town when they were 17, a hurricane of charm and grace with a smile that could disarm even the most guarded heart. Both Ethan and Liam noticed her immediately. But where Ethan hesitated, burying his feelings behind nervous glances and unspoken words, Liam acted. He asked her out within a week of meeting her. By their senior prom, Sophia and Liam were the couple everyone admired. Beautiful, confident, magnetic. And Ethan, he was the best friend, always there, always loyal, always watching from the sidelines. He told himself it didn't matter, that Liam's happiness was his happiness. That was what friends did, but sometimes, late at night, when he couldn't sleep, Ethan wondered what might have happened if he had been braver, if he had told Sophia how he felt before Liam had. But those thoughts were selfish, he reasoned. And Liam deserved all the happiness in the world, so he buried them. They all stayed close through college, Liam and Sophia attending the same university 2 states over, while Ethan stayed back, helping his dad run the family hardware store. But the distance never weakened their bond. Every holiday, every break, they picked up exactly where they left off, sharing beers by the fire pit behind Ethan's house, reminiscing about old times, laughing at their inside jokes that no one else could ever understand. When Liam called one crisp autumn morning, his voice thick with emotion, and said, "Ethan, I'm gonna propose to Sophia." Ethan's heart clenched, an involuntary reaction he didn't fully understand, but his voice was steady when he responded, "Man, that's amazing. She's the one. Always has been." Liam laughed softly, nervous and excited. "I'm gonna ask her next week, wish me luck. Always." And he meant it, because that was what best friends did. What Ethan didn't know then, what he couldn't possibly have known, was that buried beneath the years of loyalty, love, and unwavering trust was a secret, one that would shatter everything. But for now, in this chapter of their lives, everything still seemed perfect. 2 best friends about to take the next step into adulthood together, one as the groom, the other as the best man. The bond seemed unbreakable, but some secrets, some betrayals, are like cracks in glass, imperceptible at first, until one day, with the slightest pressure, everything shatters. Chapter 2. The Proposal and the Promise. Ethan had never seen Liam so nervous. They sat together in their usual spot, a weathered bench overlooking Lake Harwood, where they had spent countless afternoons fishing, skipping stones, or just sitting in comfortable silence. But today, Liam couldn't sit still. His leg bounced uncontrollably, and he kept running his fingers through his hair, messing it up even more than usual. Ethan leaned back, squinting against the golden light of late afternoon. "Man, relax," he said, offering a half smile. "She's gonna say yes. You know that." Liam let out a shaky breath, rubbing his palms together like he was trying to create friction to burn off the anxiety. "Yeah, I know. I want it to be perfect, you know?" Ethan chuckled softly. "It's Sophia. As long as it's you, it'll be perfect." Liam turned to him then, eyes bright with gratitude. "Thanks, man. I couldn't have done any of this without you." Ethan swallowed hard against the lump rising in his throat. "Yeah, well, you're my best friend. Always have been." Liam nodded, then reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the ring box. He flipped it open, revealing the delicate diamond nestled inside. Ethan whistled low. "Damn, that's beautiful." Liam grinned sheepishly. "Took me 4 months to save up for it." Ethan clapped a hand on his shoulder. "She's gonna love it." They sat there for a moment longer, the silence between them filled not with words, but with the weight of years, of trust, loyalty, and a bond that neither had ever questioned. But Ethan felt something else in that moment too, something he couldn't quite name. A faint, almost imperceptible distance, like a small shift in the air, the kind you only notice right before a storm. A week later, Liam proposed. He had arranged for it to happen at the Botanical Gardens where he and Sophia had gone on their first official date. Ethan had helped with everything, from reserving the private gazebo to hiding the photographer in the bushes. Sophia said yes before Liam even finished asking. The photos that captured the moment were perfect, Sophia's hands over her mouth, tears streaming down her cheeks, Liam down on one knee, his own eyes wet with emotion. Later that night, they all gathered at a local bar to celebrate. Ethan stood at the edge of the crowd, nursing his beer, watching as Liam and Sophia danced together. Completely lost in each other, he should have been happy. He told himself he was. But as he watched Liam spin Sophia around the dance floor, her laughter echoing through the room, Ethan couldn't shake the ache deep in his chest. It wasn't jealousy, or at least that's what he tried to convince himself. It was something else, something darker, something heavier. A gnawing sense that something about all of this wasn't right. Later that night, Liam found him sitting outside on the curb, staring up at the stars. "You good?" Liam asked, sitting down beside him, their shoulders bumping like they had 1,000 times before. Ethan nodded, forcing a smile. "Yeah, just taking it all in." Liam chuckled. "Yeah, it's a lot." They sat there in silence for a while, before Liam spoke again, his voice softer, more serious. "Promise me something." Ethan turned to look at him. "Anything. When I screw up, and you know I will, promise you'll tell me. You've always been the one who keeps me grounded." Ethan swallowed hard, the words catching in his throat. Of course, always. But neither of them knew, sitting there under that vast, indifferent sky, that the biggest screw-up had already happened, that the secret was already out there, lurking in the shadows, just waiting to be discovered. And when it finally was, it wouldn't just change Liam's life. It would destroy their friendship. Chapter 3, The Invitation. The wedding invitation arrived on a crisp autumn morning. Ethan found it waiting on his doorstep, the elegant ivory envelope nestled among the usual stack of bills and junk mail. His name was written in Sophia's looping, graceful script, the kind that always seemed to convey both warmth and formality. He held it for a moment, staring at it like it was a fragile artifact, as if opening it would make everything real in a way he wasn't ready to confront. Finally, he slid his finger under the seal and pulled out the thick, cream-colored card. "Liam Carter and Sophia Bennett request the honor of your presence." His chest tightened. Of course, he'd known this was coming. They had been planning the wedding for months. He had even helped Liam pick out the venue, toured the catering halls, and given advice about tuxedos. But seeing it there, in ink, with the date set in stone, it hit different. It hit like a weight, a final, irreversible step, the end of something, and the beginning of something else. He tossed the rest of the mail on the kitchen counter, but kept the invitation in his hand, tracing the embossed floral border with his thumb. For a long time, he just stood there in the quiet of his apartment, listening to the low hum of the refrigerator and the faint sounds of traffic outside. Then he did something he hadn't done in months. He texted Sophia. "Ethan, beautiful invite. Congrats." Sophia, "Thank you. Means a lot coming from you." The dots appeared. She was typing something else, then stopped. He stared at the screen, waiting, but nothing more came. The following weekend, Liam called. "Dude, got the invite?" Ethan laughed softly. "Yeah, man. Looks great." Liam's voice was buoyant, electric with happiness. "It's all happening, bro. Finally!" Ethan swallowed the knot in his throat. "Yeah, finally." There was a brief pause. "You okay?" Liam asked, his tone shifting slightly, detecting something under Ethan's casual facade. Ethan forced a grin he knew Liam couldn't see. "Yeah, just surreal, you know?" Liam exhaled. "Yeah, it is." There was another pause, heavier this time. "You're my best man," Liam said suddenly. Ethan froze. "What? You heard me. I want you up there with me. Who else, right?" Ethan let out a shaky laugh, more reflex than joy. "Yeah, right. Of course." He was quiet for a moment, staring at the framed photo on his bookshelf. A picture from their senior year of high school. The two of them, arms slung around each other's shoulders, grinning like idiots. No idea what was coming. "You good with that?" Liam pressed. Ethan cleared his throat. "Yeah, man. Honored." But even as he said it, something deep inside him twisted. Because being the best man wasn't just about standing beside Liam on his happiest day. It was about witnessing, up close, the moment he'd officially lose him forever. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, his mind a tangle of thoughts he couldn't quite sort out. Why did it feel like he was mourning something? Why did every conversation with Liam now feel like a performance, as if they were both reading from a script they hadn't written? And why, above all, did Sophia's brief, polite text gnaw at him the most? He remembered the way she used to laugh around him, the way she used to confide in him, sometimes even before she did with Liam. There had been a time not so long ago when the three of them were inseparable. But somewhere along the way, things had shifted. Lines had blurred, secrets had formed, and Ethan was beginning to suspect that he wasn't the only one keeping them. The next morning, as he sipped bitter coffee and stared out the window at the rain, his phone buzzed. A message from Sophia. Just 3 words. "Sophia, can we talk?" Ethan stared at the screen, heart pounding, the question echoing in his mind like a warning bell. Talk about what? What could she possibly need to say to him now, with the wedding only weeks away? Chapter 4. The confessionathan's fingers hovered over the screen. The words, "Can we talk?" staring back at him like a dare. His thumb moved instinctively to type, "Of course," but then he hesitated. Because this wasn't just any message from Sophia. Not now. Not when she was weeks away from marrying his best friend. He stared at the words for a long moment, his reflection faint in the darkened glass of the window behind his phone, rain tracing slow, uneven lines down the pane. Finally, he typed back, "Ethan." "Yeah, when?" The reply came fast. "Sophia, now?" His pulse quickened. He glanced at the clock, 10:13 a.m. Sunday. The city was gray and cold, the streets nearly empty, as if the world itself was holding its breath along with him. "Ethan." "Okay, where?" "Sophia." "Your place?" He exhaled sharply, ran a hand through his hair. "Ethan." "Yeah, come over." He set the phone down, heart racing as he quickly straightened the apartment. Not that Sophia hadn't seen it a million times before, but this time felt different. He didn't know why. Or maybe he did. 20 minutes later, there was a soft knock at the door. When he opened it, Sophia stood there in a beige trench coat, damp from the rain, her long brown hair pulled into a loose, messy bun, raindrops clinging to stray strands like tiny beads of glass. "Hey," she said, her voice small. "Hey," he replied, stepping aside to let her in. She peeled off the coat and draped it over the chair, moving with a kind of quiet nervousness that Ethan had never seen in her before. They had always been casual, easy together, years of friendship smoothing over the need for formality. But now, every movement seemed deliberate, loaded with something unspoken. He gestured toward the couch. "Want coffee?" he asked, trying to break the tension. She shook her head. "No. I need to say this." Ethan sat down across from her, suddenly hyper-aware of the silence between them, the low hum of the heater filling the space where their usual banter would be. Sophia took a breath, her eyes darting to the window before settling back on him. "I can't marry him," she said abruptly. Ethan blinked, not sure if he'd heard her right. "What?" Her voice cracked slightly, but she didn't look away. "I can't marry Liam." The words hung in the air like smoke, thick and impossible to ignore. Ethan swallowed hard. "Why?" Sophia closed her eyes for a second, gathering herself, then opened them again, wide, glassy with tears, but resolute. "Because," she started, then faltered, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Because I'm in love with someone else." Ethan's heart stopped. He sat there, staring at her, his mind suddenly blank, like a record skipping violently off track. He hadn't prepared for this. "Not this. Who?" he asked, even though he already knew. Sophia bit her lip, a tear slipping down her cheek. "You," she said. The room spun. Ethan gripped the edge of the couch cushion like it was the only thing anchoring him to reality. "Soph," he started, but she cut him off. I know it's wrong. I know I should have told you, or him, or someone, but I couldn't. I kept thinking I'd get over it, that it was just cold feet or panic or whatever." She let out a shaky breath. "But it's not. It's real. It's been real for a long time." Ethan shook his head, trying to process, trying to breathe through the panic rising in his chest. "Why are you telling me this now?" Sophia wiped at her tears, forcing a bitter laugh. "Because I can't stand there, on that altar, and lie. Not to him, not to myself." Ethan felt his stomach twist, a cocktail of guilt, confusion, longing, and devastation, all tangled up into one unbearable knot, I thought. "You loved him," he said quietly. "I do," she whispered. "Just not the way I should." She looked at him then. Really looked at him, her eyes searching his face like she was afraid of what she might, or might not, find there. "I don't know what to do," she admitted. Ethan exhaled, leaning back, staring at the ceiling as if it might offer answers he didn't have. Neither of them spoke for a long time. Finally, he whispered, "You should tell him." Sophia swallowed hard, nodding. Slowly, "I know," then softer. "Will you Be there? When I do? Ethan looked at her, his best friend's fiancée, the girl he had quietly loved from a distance for years, now confessing she felt the same. But the cost, the collateral damage? He nodded, even though it felt like his chest might cave in under the weight of it. Yeah, he said. I'll be there. The rain had stopped when she left. Ethan stood by the window watching her walk down the street, her figure growing smaller until it disappeared completely. He pressed his forehead against the cold glass, closing his eyes. This wasn't how it was supposed to go, none of it. Chapter 5, The Decision. The next morning, Ethan woke up to the sound of his phone vibrating violently on the nightstand. For a second, he just stared at it, the screen flashing Sophia's name over and over, as if the universe itself was mocking him. He didn't answer. Instead, he lay there staring at the cracks in the ceiling of his apartment, listening to the dull, familiar city noise filtering through the half-open window. Somewhere far off, a siren wailed, a dog barked. Life kept going, unbothered by the fact that his had just shattered into unrecognizable pieces. His mind was a chaos of images from the night before. Sophia's tear-filled confession, her trembling hands, the raw panic in her voice when she said, "I can't marry him." And then the most haunting part, the unspoken plea in her eyes when she asked him to stand by her side when she broke Liam's heart. Ethan squeezed his eyes shut, running a hand across his face. How did it come to this? How did a lifetime of loyalty, of friendship, of brotherhood get twisted into this impossible knot? The phone stopped buzzing. Then, seconds later, it buzzed again. A text this time. Sophia. "Please call me, I need you." He sat up slowly, his body heavy with the weight of indecision, his chest tight like there wasn't enough air in the world to fill his lungs. He wanted to be there for her. Of course he did. But at what cost? His friendship with Liam was the only thing that had ever been constant in his life. From their first day of kindergarten, when Liam offered him a spare crayon during art class, they'd been inseparable. They'd built forts together, skinned, their knees on the same sidewalks, shared secrets and heartbreaks over late-night beers. Ethan knew every chapter of Liam's life. Except now, this one. This chapter Liam hadn't written yet, where his fiancée confessed to loving someone else. Ethan gritted his teeth, standing up and pacing the small apartment. How was he supposed to look Liam in the eyes after this? How? Was he supposed to be his best man, deliver a speech at their wedding, clink champagne glasses, and smile for pictures knowing the truth, and worse, knowing that he was part of it? He looked down at his phone again. Another text. Sophia. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said anything. I couldn't keep it in anymore." Ethan let out a shaky breath, leaning against the kitchen counter. His mind flashed back to all the years they had been friends, the three of them, always together. Movie nights, spontaneous road trips, drunken karaoke after too many shots of whiskey. Sophia had been Liam's girl, but she had been Ethan's best friend too, maybe even more. He thought of the late nights when Liam had already fallen asleep, and Sophia and Ethan stayed up talking quietly in the living room, their conversation meandering from philosophy to fears about the future, their connection unspoken, but palpable. He thought about the way her eyes lingered sometimes, longer than they should, the way their fingers brushed when passing each other the popcorn, the moments that felt like nothing and everything. Was it all leading to this? Was this inevitable? Or had they all just been too naive, too tangled in their own comfort to see it coming? Ethan sank into the chair by the window, staring out at the city bathed in muted gray. He knew what he had to do. He just didn't know if he had the strength to do it. An hour later, he picked up his phone and dialed. Sophia answered on the first ring. "Ethan?" Her voice was small, raw, like she hadn't slept either. "Yeah," he exhaled. There was a long pause. "I'm sorry," she said, breaking the silence first. "I know," he replied, his voice low. Another pause, the kind that only exists between people who know each other too well, where everything and nothing needs to be said. I can't do this to him," Ethan finally said, forcing the words out through the tightness in his throat. Sophia inhaled sharply. "I know. I can't stand there and watch you break his heart," Ethan continued, gripping the phone tighter, like it was the only thing tethering him to the moment. "But I can't let you walk into a marriage when you're not in love with him either." Her voice cracked. "Ethan!" He closed his eyes, feeling the burn behind them. "You have to tell him, Sophia," he said, his voice trembling. "You owe him that." Sophia was silent for a moment, then whispered, "I'm scared." Ethan swallowed hard. "I know," he said softly. "Me too." Another silence. Then, "Will you be there?" she asked again, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan leaned his head back against the wall, staring at the ceiling. The question echoed in his mind, heavy with consequence. Finally, he whispered, "Yes." The decision made, Ethan felt a strange, cold calm settle over him, like stepping into a storm after hours of waiting inside. The wind would cut through him, the rain would soak him to the bone, but at least he wasn't standing still anymore. At least he wasn't pretending that nothing was wrong. Later that night, he sat at the edge of his bed, staring at the old photograph framed on his dresser. Him, Liam, and Sophia, arms around each other, grinning like idiots at some beach trip years ago. Before all of this, before the lies, the secrets, the impossible choices. He traced the edge of the frame with his thumb, then set it face down. Some things you can't keep looking at, not when they hurt too much. Chapter 6. The Confrontation. The days leading up to the confrontation stretched out endlessly, like the suffocating pause before a storm breaks. Ethan could barely eat, barely sleep. His mind was a constant loop of imagined outcomes, all of them ending in disaster. He hadn't seen Liam since that night, hadn't answered his calls or texts. Every message was cheerful, oblivious. "Dude, bachelor party plans, you in? Need your help with the playlist. Sophie and I are thinking of getting away after the honeymoon. What do you think of Italy?" Ethan couldn't bring himself to respond. Not when everything in his chest felt like it was breaking apart, one splinter at a time. Finally, after 4 days of silence, Liam showed up at Ethan's apartment unannounced. It was a Saturday morning. Rain pelted the windows in steady sheets, turning the city into a blur of gray and silver. There was a knock, then another. "Ethan?" Liam's familiar voice rang through the door. Ethan stood frozen in the living room, coffee going cold in his hands, staring at the door as if it might disappear if he wished hard enough. Another knock, louder this time. "Come on, man. I know. You're in there." Ethan set the mug down and walked slowly to the door. His hand hovered over the knob for a long moment before he finally turned it. Liam stood there, dripping wet, no umbrella, his dark hair plastered to his forehead. He smiled as he always did, wide, easy, unguarded. "You alive?" he joked, stepping in before Ethan could say anything. Ethan shut the door and turned to face him. "Yeah," he muttered. Liam shook the rain off his jacket and looked around. "Place looks the same. Depressingly neat." Ethan gave a hollow chuckle. Liam's smile faded, sensing the heaviness in the air. "What's up, man? You've been MIA all week." Ethan swallowed hard, leaning against the wall, gripping the edge of the console table like it was the only thing keeping him upright. "Liam," he started, but the words caught in his throat. Liam raised an eyebrow, his playful demeanor shifting to concern. "What is it?" Ethan looked at his best friend, really looked at him, at the familiar lines of his face, the easy confidence, the complete and utter trust that had defined their friendship for nearly 2 decades. He felt his stomach twist violently. Ethan started, then shook his head. Liam took a step closer. "You're scaring me." Ethan inhaled sharply. "There's something I need to tell you." Liam's expression shifted, the crease between his brows deepening, the corners of his mouth turning down. "Okay," he said cautiously. Ethan's hands trembled as he ran them through his hair. "It's about Sophia." Immediately, Liam's whole body tensed. "What about her?" Ethan swallowed again, wishing more than anything that he could unlive the last week, that he could rewind time to some harmless, simpler moment when all of this hadn't been laid bare, but there was no going back, not anymore. She told me something," Ethan forced out. Liam's eyes narrowed. "What?" Ethan exhaled shakily. "She doesn't think she can go through with the wedding." The words hung in the air between them, dense and sharp like glass. For a second, Liam didn't react at all. Then he blinked, shook his head slightly, as if trying to clear a fog. What are you talking about?" Ethan's voice cracked. "She said she's not sure if she loves you the way she should." Liam let out a short, humorless laugh, turning away. "That's ridiculous. We're getting married in 2 weeks." Ethan winced, his chest tightening. No." Liam paced the room, running both hands through his wet hair. "She's just stressed. It's pre-wedding jitters. That's all." Ethan bit the inside of his cheek, tasting blood. "It's more than that." Liam stopped and turned to him, his eyes flashing. "What the hell does that mean?" Ethan looked down, then forced himself to meet Liam's gaze. "It means she's been having doubts for a long time." Liam's face contorted with disbelief. "How do you know that?" Ethan hesitated, the silence speaking volumes. Then Liam's eyes widened in realization. "You talked to her?" Ethan nodded slowly. "When?" Ethan's voice dropped to a whisper. "Last week." Liam let out a sharp breath, backing away like Ethan had just physically shoved him. "She came to you? About this?" Ethan nodded again. Liam's chest rose and fell rapidly as if the walls were closing in. "Why didn't she come to me?" Ethan shook his head helplessly. "I don't know." Liam laughed bitterly. No, you know. You've always known." Ethan's eyes snapped up. "What are you talking about?" Liam glared at him, rage and hurt swirling violently beneath the surface. "You've always been there, always between us." Ethan's mouth fell open. "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" Liam snapped, stepping closer. "You two always had your little inside jokes, your late-night talks. Don't think I didn't notice." Ethan swallowed hard. "It wasn't like that," Liam scoffed. "Wasn't it?" Ethan's voice cracked. "I never—" "Did you sleep with her?" Liam demanded suddenly, his voice like a gunshot. Ethan's stomach lurched violently. "No!" he shouted. "Jesus, no!" Liam stared at him, searching his face for any sign of deceit. Ethan held his gaze, breathing hard, his heart pounding. After a long, suffocating silence, Liam looked away, exhaling shakily. Ethan took a small step closer. "I didn't want this to happen," he said quietly, "but you deserve the truth." Liam let out a humorless laugh, his voice thick with bitterness. "The truth," he echoed. Then he turned, pacing toward the window, staring out at the rain. For a long time, neither of them said anything. The city hummed outside, indifferent to the wreckage unfolding inside the apartment. Finally, Liam spoke, his voice low and hollow. "So, what now?" Ethan leaned against the wall, feeling utterly, completely drained. "I don't know," he whispered. Liam kept staring out the window, his reflection fractured in the glass. Then he said, so quietly Ethan barely heard, "She was supposed to be my forever." Ethan's throat tightened, his eyes stinging. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Liam nodded slowly, still staring out at the storm. The conversation was over, but nothing had really been said, and everything had changed. Chapter 7. Shattered Loyalties. Liam didn't go home that night. After their confrontation, he simply left Ethan's apartment without another word, disappearing into the rainy streets like a ghost. Ethan stood frozen in the doorway long after Liam was gone, listening to the echo of his footsteps fade down the hallway until there was only the sound of the rain and the dull, relentless ache in his chest. He wanted to run after him, to say something, anything that could make this less catastrophic, but what was left to say? He had detonated a bomb, and now there was only debris. For 3 days, Ethan heard nothing from Liam. Not a call, not a text, not even a passive-aggressive social media post, which Liam had a reputation for when he was angry or hurt. Just silence. And in that silence, Ethan's guilt festered like an open wound. The memories looped mercilessly in his mind. Them at age 7, sharing comic books in Liam's treehouse. At 12, sneaking beers from Ethan's older brother's stash and promising to be best friends forever. At 17, when Liam got his heart broken for the first time and Ethan stayed up with him all night, telling him he'd find someone better. At 20, when Liam had introduced him to Sophia at that college party, her laugh so infectious, her presence magnetic. And now Ethan had torn all of that apart. He didn't know what to do. He couldn't talk to Sophia. She was just as much a part of this fracture as he was. But more than that, he didn't trust himself around her anymore. He'd never dared to admit it, not even to himself. But there had always been something there, a pull, a gravitational force that he'd fought against for years out of loyalty to Liam. But now he wasn't sure if it had been loyalty or cowardice. The silence was finally broken late on the 4th night. Ethan was sitting on the floor of his apartment, staring blankly at the TV, not even registering what was playing, when his phone buzzed, a message from Liam. "Meet me, our spot." No punctuation, no time, no explanation, but Ethan knew exactly what it meant. Their spot. The old pedestrian bridge over the river where they used to go whenever life got too loud. First as kids, then as teens, sneaking out late at night. Then, as adults looking for clarity in the chaos of the world, Ethan grabbed his jacket and ran. The city was cold and wet, but he barely noticed as he cut through the streets, his heart pounding with anticipation and dread. By the time he reached the bridge, the rain had slowed to a mist, casting a hazy glow over the city lights, reflecting in the water below. And there he was. Liam, leaning against the railing, staring out at the river, his hands shoved deep into his coat pockets. He didn't turn when Ethan approached. Ethan stopped a few feet away, uncertain. "Hey," he said softly. Liam didn't respond right. Away. Then after a long pause, "Took you long enough." Ethan let out a shaky breath and moved to stand beside him, mimicking his posture, both of them facing the water. The silence stretched between them, thick and suffocating. Finally, Liam broke it. "So, you and Sophia?" Ethan swallowed hard. "There's no me and Sophia," Liam scoffed. "Could have fooled me." Ethan turned to him, desperation rising in his voice. "Liam, I swear, nothing happened between us." Liam finally looked at him then. Really looked at him. His eyes hollow, darkened by sleepless nights and betrayal. "But you wanted it to," he said quietly. Not a question, a statement. Ethan opened his mouth, then closed it, his throat tightening. He started, but the words crumbled. Liam let out a bitter laugh, turning back to the water. "That's what I thought." Ethan ran a hand through his hair, struggling to hold himself together. "I never acted on it. I couldn't. Because you're my best friend." Liam's jaw clenched. The word hit Ethan like a punch to the chest. Liam. Liam shook his head, exhaling sharply. You should have told me, he said. Years ago, if you had feelings for her? If there was even a chance? Ethan's voice cracked. I didn't want to ruin what we had. Liam gave him a hard sideways glance. Congratulations. You did it anyway. Ethan felt his vision blur, blinking rapidly to keep the tears from falling. I never wanted this. Liam nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. I know. He pushed off the railing and shoved his hands deeper into his pockets, taking a step away. But here we are. Ethan followed him with his eyes, his heart pounding. So what now? He asked, voice barely above a whisper. Liam paused, his back still to him. Then, in a voice as cold and distant as the misty air around them, he said, I'm still marrying her. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. What? Liam turned back, his expression steely. She's having doubts. Fine. But she said yes. We made a commitment. Ethan shook his head, unable to believe what he was hearing. But if she's not? Sure, she will be, Liam cut him off. We've been through too much. Ethan felt the ground shift beneath him. Liam, you can't force this. Liam laughed bitterly. Not forcing anything. I'm reminding her. Reminding both of us. Ethan stared at him, helpless. Is that really what you want? A marriage built on doubt? On fear? Liam's eyes flashed with something Ethan couldn't quite name. Anger, sadness, pride, all tangled together. I want my life back, he said simply. And then he walked past Ethan, his shoulder brushing his as he did. Ethan turned to watch him disappear into the fog, his figure swallowed up by the night. Ethan stayed on the bridge long after Liam was gone, gripping the railing so tightly his knuckles turned white. He stared down at the black water below, the city lights rippling across its surface like shattered glass. In the distance, church bells rang out, soft, mournful, distant, and for the first time since this all began, Ethan realized there was no fixing this, not now, maybe not ever. Chapter 8, The Wedding Dilemma. The days that followed their meeting on the bridge blurred together for Ethan. Every hour, every minute, felt suspended between the unbearable weight of what had been said and what had been left unsaid. He hadn't heard from Liam again, not even a text. It was as if that night on the bridge had been a final reckoning, a point of no return. And yet Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that there was still something left, some last piece of the puzzle that hadn't yet fallen into place. The wedding was only 2 weeks away. 2 weeks. The invitations had already gone out. The venue was booked. The dress, the tux, the catering, the music, all finalized. To everyone. Else, it was just another upcoming wedding, a celebration of love. But for Ethan, it felt more like an execution date. He thought about calling Sophia 1,000 times, but he didn't. What could he even say? That he knew she had doubts, that he knew about the almost kiss in the apartment that day, that he knew everything? No, he couldn't. Not without making things even more complicated, even more broken. So instead, he stayed quiet until the envelope arrived. It was a crisp, ivory invitation with embossed gold lettering. Formal, elegant, perfect. Ethan sat on his couch, turning it over in his hands like it was a grenade. He already knew what it said, but he opened it anyway. You are cordially invited to the wedding of Liam Carter and Sophia Bennett. The words felt like they were carved into his chest. He stared at their names side by side, bound together forever by ink, soon to be bound by law, by vows, by a life that he would be forever on the outside of. The RSVP card slipped from the envelope and landed on his lap. Attending? Yes. No, Ethan let out a hollow laugh, as if it were that simple. The next morning, unable to sit with the suffocating silence any longer, Ethan went for a run, It was something he hadn't done in weeks, months maybe, not since all of this started unraveling. He ran through the city streets, past the park where they used to play baseball as kids, past the cafe where Liam had first introduced him to Sophia, past all the places that used to feel like home and now just felt haunted. The cold air burned his lungs, but he kept running, as if he could outrun the memories. He couldn't. When he finally stopped, gasping for breath, he found himself standing outside a boutique he hadn't consciously intended to visit. Through the window, he saw Sophia. She was sitting at a small table near the window, sipping tea, her phone resting idly beside her. She looked tired. Not the glowing bride-to-be he would have expected. Her eyes carried the weight of someone trapped between duty and desire, between love and fear. Ethan stood there for a long moment, hidden behind the reflection in the glass, watching her, as the world bustled obliviously around them. Then, before he could talk himself out of it, he walked in. The bell above the door chimed softly. Sophia looked up, startled, and for a split second her expression softened. "Ethan." He gave a faint, awkward wave. "Hey." She motioned to the chair across from her. "Sit." He did. They stared at each other in silence, the noise of the cafe fading into the background. Finally, Sophia spoke. "I wasn't sure if I'd see you before the wedding." Ethan swallowed hard. "Me neither." She smiled faintly, but it didn't reach her eyes. There was so much he wanted to say, so much he wanted to ask. But all that came out was, "Are you okay?" Sophia looked down at her tea, tracing the rim of the cup with her fingertip. "I don't know." Her voice was so quiet he barely heard her. Ethan leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "Sophia." She shook her head, cutting him off. "Don't." He blinked. "Don't what?" "Don't make this harder than it already is." Ethan sat back, stunned by her sudden sharpness. I just... Sophia closed her eyes, exhaling shakily. "You think I don't know about how you feel?" Ethan froze. She opened her eyes and looked at him, really looked at him, with a rawness that made his heart ache. "I've always known." Ethan's mouth went dry. "I never said anything." "I know," she said. "And that's what makes it worse." He frowned. "Worse?" Sophia nodded, biting her lower lip. "Because it made me doubt everything." Ethan's chest tightened. "I never wanted that." Sophia laughed bitterly. "Didn't you? You could have told me years ago, before Liam proposed, before all of this." Ethan shook his head, his voice cracking. "I didn't want to hurt him." Sophia let out a pained sigh. "And yet, here we are." The silence stretched between them again, heavy with all the words they would never say. Finally, Sophia pushed her chair back and stood. "I have to go." Ethan stood too, panic rising in his throat. "Sophia, wait." She looked at him, her eyes glistening. "Please, don't." And then she turned and walked out, leaving Ethan standing there, feeling more hollow than he ever had. As he left the cafe, the envelope weighed heavily in his jacket pocket. He hadn't mailed the RSVP yet. He couldn't, not when everything felt this unstable, this unfinished. But time was running out. That night, he lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment with Sophia in his mind. Her eyes, her voice, the almost kiss, the confession that she had always known. And Liam, his best friend, his brother in all but blood. How could he stand by and watch him marry someone who might not truly love him? Someone who might love someone else? Ethan knew he had to make a choice, say nothing, and stand at the altar as Liam's best man, pretending everything was fine. Or tell the truth, risk everything, and potentially lose them both. Neither option felt survivable. His phone buzzed, a message from Liam. "Need your measurements for the tux." Ethan stared at the screen, numb. After everything, it was as if Liam was determined to bulldoze ahead, pretending nothing had happened. Ethan typed out a reply, then deleted it. Typed again. Deleted. Finally, he just set the phone down and buried, his face in his hands. Across the city, Sophia sat on her bed, her wedding dress hanging on the back of the door. She stared at it, her reflection in the mirror pale and uncertain. She thought about Ethan, about Liam, about the life she was about to commit to, and the life she could have had. Her phone buzzed. A message from Liam. "Can't wait to see you in white." She smiled, faintly, then quickly wiped away a tear. In the darkness, all three of them lay awake, alone with their doubts and desires. The wedding was happening in less than 2 weeks, and none of them knew how it would end. Chapter 9. The Night Before. The night before the wedding, the city was cloaked in a quiet, suffocating stillness, as though it too was holding its breath. Ethan sat alone in his apartment, the formal tuxedo hanging by the door, untouched. The glossy shoes, the cufflinks, the bow tie, everything was laid out, prepared for the ceremony that was supposed to be a celebration of love and commitment. But for Ethan, it felt like preparing for a funeral, the funeral of the life he had always imagined, the funeral of his unspoken love. He poured himself a drink, whiskey, neat, and sat by the window staring out at the glittering skyline. The city lights shimmered like distant stars, but they offered no comfort tonight. All he could see in his mind was Liam's wide, excited grin, Sophia's nervous smile, and the unbearable gap between the two. He hadn't spoken to either of them since that encounter with Sophia at the cafe. Not a word. They hadn't reached out either. It was as if they were all frozen in their own corners of the world, waiting for fate to deliver the final blow. On the table beside him, the RSVP card still sat, unsigned. It felt absurd now. The question of whether he was attending the wedding was irrelevant. He wasn't just attending. He was standing beside Liam at the altar, as his best man, as his brother, as his betrayer. Ethan ran a hand through his hair and let out a shuddering breath. What the hell was he supposed to do? His phone buzzed, a text from Liam. "Big day tomorrow, man. Thanks for being by my side." Ethan swallowed hard, staring at the words. For a moment, he considered replying. Something simple, casual. But what could he possibly say that wouldn't be a lie? Across the city, in her apartment, Sophia stood in front of the full-length mirror, wearing the wedding dress for what might be the last time before the ceremony. The dress was exquisite. Lace, silk, perfectly tailored to her frame. It should have made her feel beautiful, excited, overjoyed, but instead, it made her feel trapped, like she was stepping into a role she no longer knew how to play. Her mother was asleep in the guest room, exhausted from helping with last-minute arrangements. Friends and family had flown in from all over. Everyone was here. Everyone was expecting the perfect wedding, but Sophia wasn't sure she could give it to them. She touched the pendant around her neck, a small silver charm Ethan had given her years ago on her birthday. At the time, it had been nothing, more than a gesture from her fiancé's best friend, but now it felt like a chain binding her to a version of herself she wasn't sure existed anymore. Her phone vibrated. Liam. "You ready for tomorrow?" She hesitated, fingers hovering over the keyboard, then typed, "Yeah, of course." But as soon as she sent it, she set the phone down and walked away, unable to bear the conversation. Liam, meanwhile, sat alone in his childhood bedroom at his parents' house, staring at the same ceiling he had stared at as a boy, dreaming of the future. Tomorrow, everything would change. He'd marry Sophia, start a new chapter. But there was a knot in his chest that he couldn't shake. Something unspoken, something off. He thought about Ethan, his brother since they were 6 years old. They'd barely talked. Since the bachelor party, Liam couldn't figure out why. Was Ethan just caught up in his own life? Or was there something more? A part of him wanted to call him, to confront it. But another part didn't want to know. Didn't want anything to tarnish the perfect image of tomorrow. So instead, he rolled over, closed his eyes, and forced himself to sleep. But sleep did not come easily to any of them. Ethan paced his apartment, stopping to stare at the tux again. He imagined standing at the altar, watching Sophia walk down the aisle toward Liam. He imagined their vows, their kiss, the applause. He imagined the moment when it would all be official, when there would be no more room for doubts, for second thoughts, for him. Could he really stand there and say nothing? Could he really let this happen? The thought made him nauseous. He poured another drink, but it didn't help. Nothing did. Suddenly, on impulse, he grabbed his coat and keys and walked out the door. He didn't know where he was going. He just knew he couldn't stay. Not here, not alone with these thoughts. The night air was crisp, biting at his skin as he walked through the empty streets. Eventually, almost as if pulled by some invisible force, he found himself at the park, their park, where he and Liam used to play as kids, where they used to dream about their futures, completely oblivious to how messy and complicated it would all become. He sat on the old swing set, the metal cold against his palms, and closed his eyes. That's when he heard a voice. "Ethan?" He turned. It was Sophia. She stood there, wrapped in a long coat, her hair pulled back, her eyes wide with surprise, and something else. Relief? Fear? He couldn't tell. "What? What are you doing here?" he asked, stunned. "I couldn't sleep," she said softly, stepping closer. "I just needed air." Ethan let out a shaky laugh. "Me too." They stood there in silence for a moment, the only sound the distant hum of the city. Then Sophia sat on the swing beside him. "This used to be our place," she said quietly. Ethan nodded. "Yeah." They both stared at the empty playground, memories flooding back. Of the three of them running through the grass, chasing each other, making promises they had no idea they wouldn't be able to keep. Finally, Sophia broke the silence. "Are you coming tomorrow?" Ethan swallowed. "I'm supposed to." Sophia looked down at her hands. "You don't have to." Ethan blinked. "What?" She looked at him, eyes filled with something raw and desperate. "You don't have to be there, Ethan. If it's too hard..." He shook his head. "I'm your maid of honor's brother. Liam's best man. I can't just not show up." Sophia gave a bitter smile. "Yeah, I guess not." They fell into silence again. Then Ethan turned to her. "Sophia, do you love him?" She froze. He held her gaze, his heart pounding. "Do you?" Sophia closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I don't know." The admission hit him like a freight train, even though he had already suspected it. Ethan reached out, gently taking her hand. "Sophia," she looked at him, eyes pleading. "What do I do?" Ethan shook his head, helpless. "I don't know." They sat there, fingers intertwined, both knowing that this might be the last time they could ever be this close. Finally, Sophia pulled her hand away and stood. "I should go." Ethan stood too. "Sophia." She turned, and for a moment, he thought she was going to kiss him, but instead, she just whispered, "Goodbye." Then she walked away, disappearing into the night. Ethan stood there long after she was gone, staring into the darkness. Tomorrow was the wedding, and he still had no idea what he was going to do. Chapter 10: The Wedding Day. The morning of the wedding dawned cold and gray. with heavy clouds rolling across the sky, threatening rain. It felt symbolic, as if the universe itself understood the weight of what was about to happen. Ethan stood in front of the full-length mirror in Liam's dressing room, fastening his cufflinks with trembling hands. His reflection looked foreign, a man dressed for a celebration, but whose heart was fractured beyond recognition. Behind him, Liam laughed, with his groomsmen, completely unaware of the turmoil roiling inside his best friend. "You ready, man?" Liam asked as he slapped Ethan on the back. Ethan forced a smile, nodding. "Yeah, of course." Liam beamed, completely oblivious. "You're the best man I could ever ask for." Ethan swallowed the lump in his throat and looked away. Across the venue, in a sunlit bridal suite, Sophia sat before the vanity, staring at her reflection. The makeup artist had just finished, leaving her looking flawless. Porcelain skin, soft blush, delicate eyeliner that made her blue eyes pop. Her hair was gathered in an elegant updo, and the wedding dress fit her like a dream. But to her, it all felt like a costume, a disguise. Her maid of honor, Claire, bustled around her, snapping candid photos and talking excitedly about the honeymoon, the reception, the future. Sophia barely heard a word. All she could think about was Ethan. The look in his eyes the night before, the question he'd asked, "Do you love him?" And her answer, or lack thereof. A soft knock at the door pulled her out of her trance. Her mother peeked inside, tears already glistening in her eyes. "You look beautiful, sweetheart." Sophia smiled weakly. "Thanks, Mom." Her mother came in, adjusted her veil, and whispered, "Your father would be so proud." Sophia's chest constricted at that. She wondered if he'd be proud, if he knew the truth, if he knew the secret she was carrying, the one she hadn't even admitted fully to herself. Downstairs, the guests were beginning to arrive. The grand hall was decorated to perfection. White roses adorned every table, candles flickered softly, and golden chandeliers bathed the room in warm light. The string quartet played gentle classical melodies as people took their seats. But to Ethan, everything felt like static, noise. He stood at the altar beside Liam, watching as guests filled the pews, his eyes scanning the crowd, then landing on the double doors through which Sophia would soon walk. His heart thudded in his chest. He couldn't breathe. He couldn't think. This was happening. It was really happening. The officiant gave them the signal, and the quartet transitioned to the processional. The bridesmaids began their slow walk down the aisle, smiling politely, holding their bouquets. Sophia's mother dabbed at her eyes. Liam grinned, bouncing slightly on the balls of his feet, nerves and excitement mixing. Ethan stood frozen, his hands clasped tightly in front of him, nails digging into his palms. And then the doors opened. The guests gasped softly as Sophia appeared, radiant in her gown, her veil delicately framing her face. She clutched her bouquet tightly, her knuckles white. Her eyes swept across the crowd, then locked on Liam. He smiled at her, eyes glistening. She smiled back, but it was strained. Then her gaze shifted to Ethan. For a fraction of a second, time seemed to freeze. Their eyes met, and in that silent exchange, everything passed between them. The confession they never made, the love they never voiced, the life they would never have. Ethan's chest constricted, his vision blurring. Sophia swallowed hard and looked away. The ceremony began. The officiant welcomed everyone, made a few light-hearted remarks about love and commitment. Ethan barely heard any of it. His mind was a mess of memories. Liam and him riding bikes as kids. Liam introducing him to Sophia at college, the first time he realized he loved her. The night before, sitting on that swing, her whispering, "Goodbye." He couldn't do this. He couldn't stand here and pretend, but he had to. For Liam, for Sophia, for himself. The officiant turned to Liam. Do you, Liam, take Sophia to be your lawfully wedded wife? Liam smiled wide. I do. Then, the officiant turned to Sophia. Do you, Sophia, take Liam to be your lawfully wedded husband? Sophia opened her mouth, but no words came out. The room went still. Liam tilted his head, confused. Soph? Sophia swallowed hard, her chest rising and falling rapidly. Everyone stared at her. Ethan held his breath. Then, softly, she whispered, I can't. A collective gasp echoed through the hall. Liam froze. What? Sophia shook her head, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry. I can't do this. The room erupted in murmurs. The officiant looked stunned. Liam stared at her, bewildered, devastated. Sophia, what are you saying? Sophia looked at him, eyes full of sorrow. I'm sorry, Liam. I'm so sorry. Then her gaze drifted to Ethan. Liam followed her eyes. Realization dawned, slowly, painfully. No, Liam whispered, shaking his head. No, not him. Sophia broke down, sobbing. Ethan stood there paralyzed, guilt and love and anguish tearing him apart. Liam! He started, stepping forward, but Liam recoiled. Don't! Sophia dropped her bouquet and ran down the aisle, pushing through the crowd, fleeing the hall. Liam stood frozen at the altar, his world crashing around him. Ethan took a step after her, then stopped. He looked at Liam, his best friend, his brother, who now stood shattered, betrayed. I never meant... Ethan stammered, but Liam just stared at him, eyes hollow. Then, without another word, Liam turned and walked away. The room descended into chaos. Guests murmured, some following Sophia, others comforting Liam. Ethan stood alone, at the altar, surrounded by the remnants of what should have been the happiest day of their lives. But now, it was rubble. Later that evening, Ethan found Sophia sitting alone on a park bench, still in her wedding dress, makeup smeared, veil discarded. He approached slowly. She didn't look up. I ruined everything, she whispered. Ethan sat beside her. No. You did what you had to do. She looked at him, eyes red. What now? Ethan exhaled, staring at the darkening sky. I don't know. They sat in silence, side by side, the city lights flickering to life around them, both grieving, the life they'd lost, both terrified of what came next, but for the first time, they weren't pretending. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful narratives about love, betrayal, and redemption. Share your thoughts below. What would you have done in their place? Turn on notifications so you never miss a new story from Betrayal Forgiveness.